Now, it's time for the World Brief with John Cookson, who joins us from London. Good morning, John. Warm welcome to the programme today.
Yes, hi, good morning from Downing Street here in the UK, where in 9 days from now, the British people go to the polls to elect a new Prime Minister and a new government. And if the opinion polls are correct, Rishi Sunak, the present incumbent in this behind this famous door behind me, and the Conservative government are set to be ousted in a massive way, with a thumping majority going to Keir Starmer and his Labour Party. I've got a rundown of the poll of polls to give you an example. For example, if there's an election today, Labour are on 41%. The Conservatives on 20%, trailing 20% behind, and it's been that way for some weeks now. Nigel Farage's Reform Party on 17%, the Liberal Democrats on 11%, and the Greens on 6%. So you can see from that Labour are miles out in front and set to have a 200-seat majority in the 650-seat House of Commons on July the 5th, the day after polling day. This is a massive change in the tectonic plates of political life here in the UK. It's as big as the ousting of Winston Churchill in 1945, the arrival of Maggie Thatcher in 1979, and the landslide win by Tony Blair in 1979. And you have to go all the way back to the ousting of Prime Minister Balfour back in 1906 to find the Tories getting such a rout to the opposition parties. So Keir Starmer, confident it seems that he will be Prime Minister on July the 5th. How did we get here? Where did it all start going so wrong for the Conservatives? Well, you can go back all the way to 2010 when they introduced strong austerity measures to combat the effects of the global economic crisis in 2008, 2009. Fast forward 10 years, and of course there was the COVID crisis where the British government had to bail out British companies and people themselves, those in poverty, to the tune of £1 trillion, which is a massive amount of money for any government to pay. Then came the war in Ukraine, pushing up electricity bills. And then, of course, we had the disastrous 49-day premiership of Liz Truss, which crashed the economy and sent mortgages going up through the roof. Taxes also, the British people are taxed at the highest level ever since the Second World War. So you have all those factors. And then you have to introduce other elements too, like the chaotic years of Boris Johnson in number 10. And he was, of course, a Prime Minister during the COVID crisis, involved in the scandal of the so-called COVID parties, where most of the country were hunkered down and observing COVID rules. We had a Prime Minister seemingly in a different world and operating to different rules to the rest. You've also had a number of scandals. The Tory party have been embroiled in all sorts of scandals in recent years. No less than 10 Conservative MPs have either been suspended or kicked out of the party in sex cases, sex scandals since 2019. And it's astonishing that the Conservatives, who had a thumping majority of 80 in the 2019 election, could come to this. Well, the Labour Party is set to take power, although a caveat to all of that is that the opinion polls, you have to believe what they say. Opinion polls aren't always right, but it seems in the weeks the opinion polls have been saying the same thing for a number of weeks now, so it looks very much like there will be a new Prime Minister in post come July the 5th, and that's Keir Starmer. The big worry about the Labour government is that they might try to increase taxes even further. They've said that they won't increase income tax, national insurance, VAT, which is like a sales tax. But there's plenty of opportunity for the Labour Party to increase, for example, council tax. Council tax is something which is averages out at about £2,000 a year for the average British family, which goes to the local council to pay for example, road maintenance. There are also other taxes that they can increase, like capital gains tax. Capital gains tax is a tax that you pay on a gain from selling a piece of art or your second property. That varies depending on which tax band that you're in, between 10 and 20%. So there's plenty of room there for the Labour administration to increase taxes, although insist that they have no plans to do that. So in summary, as I say, a potential seismic shift in politics in this country in the coming days, and we'll know a week on Thursday just how things are going to work out. But it looks almost certain that Rishi Sunak is going to be ousted and Keir Starmer take his place. Meanwhile, whilst the British election plods on, across the Channel things are far more febrile. President Emmanuel Macron astonished Europe and the world by dissolving the National Assembly earlier this month, following the thrashing of his Renaissance Party by Marine Le Pen's right-wing RN group. And no one quite knows why exactly Rishi Sunak did that. Some say that he'd hoped that in the chaos, the left-wing parties would continue to squabble amongst themselves and things would come out all right for his Renaissance Party in the end. But what's happened is that all the left-wing parties have now gathered into a coalition called the NFP, into a powerful force. And of course, many more French people are joining to support the RN party. And again, I can give you some figures from this morning. If this is from opinion polls, if there was a general election in France today, RN, Marine Le Pen's party, would have 35%, the left-wing NFP coalition 28%, and Macron's coalition 22%. So you can see that from those figures, and if the opinion polls are to be believed, then the RN party, Marine Le Pen's party, would have a majority in the French Parliament. But we're a long way from knowing exactly what's going to happen, because the French electoral system for the Legislative Assembly is quite complex. There's 2 rounds of voting. The first on Sunday, where a candidate in a constituency has to get 50% of the vote from 25% of the electorate. If he or she doesn't, then it goes to a second round. And in fact, there's a second round of French elections to the Legislative Assembly on July the 7th. If RN win through on all of those, then we have the possibility of Jordan Bardella of the RN party becoming Prime Minister. Bardella, from an Italian immigrant background. He has an Algerian grandmother. He's 28 years old, very bankable in terms of media presence, and that will be an astonishing situation. And look, if the right wing take control in France, this will have far greater impact on Europe and indeed in the rest of the world than the impact of the British general election. France, of course, a member of the Security Council, member of NATO, and the leading member of the European Union. Astonishing prospect there for Europe. Then, of course, just to conclude this roundup from me, on Thursday, and I'm going to get the popcorn for this, we have the head-to-head clash between Biden and Trump in the first of the presidential debates. The last time they met, Biden, 81 years old, told Trump that he thought he was the worst American president ever. Trump making jibes to Biden about being Grandpa Biden. So this is a must-watch on Thursday night. So much happening on the political scene, both here in the UK and in France and in America. I'm going to toss back to you, Lagos.
Right. Well, John, it's good to see you again. 2 quick things. Let me start with France. It looks like even the business community in France is lining up behind the conservative right. Quite a number of business leaders have made it public that they are going to support Marine Le Pen because they think under a right-wing dispensation, they will get better support. And that's why we have seen the evidence on the CAC, the stock market in France. Well, let's see how that plays out and the implications for the more popular, let's say the more established party of President Macron. But in England, it's almost given that the Conservatives are out. They are likely to get a worse dropping that they got in 1911 when they ended up with 153 seats. Some of the polls are even indicating that if they get up to 80 seats in Parliament, they will be lucky. And what they are doing is damage limitation. But I would like you, in that regard, to talk more about Scotland, where there have also been reports that the Labour Party is going to overtake the SNP, and in terms of majority. And they talk about right-wing nationalism of Scotland is likely to peter out in the next 5 years. So the Scottish part of the British election.
Yes, well, the Scots, of course, represented at the moment by majority SNP, but they've been so ravaged by scandals in recent years. The support seems to be dripping away almost by the hour, and the Labour Party very confident that they're going to pick up a number of seats. Senior figures in the SNP, one at least accused of financial irregularities. There's also questions about the previous leader, and a new leader has taken over, but even he has been beset with problems, with unpopular legislation being passed by the ruling party in the Scottish government, and the Labour Party are very confident that they're going to pick up seats. And again, opinion polls are showing Labour ahead in Scotland at the moment. So is this the end for the nationalist party in Scotland? We'll have to wait and see about that. But this dream that many Scots have of independence is still very much alive, but perhaps they don't want to be represented by the Scottish Nationalist Party, the rulers at the moment, because there's too much uncertainty and scandal swirling around that party. The Scottish people, like many English people, I have to say, are not big fans of Keir Starmer, but all they want is rid of Sunak and the Conservatives. And I think that's the same thing will happen in Scotland. They see that they've been saddled with what is purportedly a corrupt regime, and although the Scots still want independence, they don't want the SNP to carry that forward for them. And we haven't mentioned yet so far the Reform Party run by
Nigel Farage.
I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback in my ear.
Yeah.
Yes, Reform Party run by Nigel Farage. He is picking up support daily, almost by the hour in this country. He seems to be saying what ordinary folks say to each other down in the pub and over the dinner table. And he's not part of the Westminster elite. And people appreciate that, because you have to appreciate that what happens in London and some of the metropolitan districts doesn't reflect what people think in different parts of the country. And Nigel Farage is tapping into that. He's already on 17% of the vote already, and that's likely to increase. There is a suggestion that Nigel Farage might at some point be asked to join the Conservative Party and pick up the remnants of what's left of it after this election on July the 4th is over. But he said he'd like to lead the Conservative Party and become Prime Minister one day, maybe in the election after this one. So Farage still very much a maverick, and we'll have to see how things pan out in the coming days as far as support for Farage goes. He was at one point, according to one poll, ahead of the Conservatives in the opinion polls.
All right, John Cookson, thank you so much for that. I think we'll all be grabbing our popcorn as well for that Trump-Biden debate. Thanks for your time today.